Quick question. Why was Return of the Jedi in X-Men Apocalypse? My first reaction to this was pretty simple. I didn't like it because I thought it didn't have to do anything with the plot. I did some research on Google, and it seems like a lot of people really dislike this scene and considered it the main reason anybody disliked the film. The lack of the use of the new characters in this film were a reason a lot of people didn't like it. Google searching the third film is always the worst. Even has its own entry on Google search. First off, let's go over the scene. The film zooms in on a movie theater listing Return of the Jedi on it. Jubilee mentions they couldn't beat Empire. Someone mentions the first one was good for starting the franchises. And of course, there's an infamous line. This is a real meta postmodern moment. I'll get to that in a moment. Being an 80s thing, setting up that it takes the film around the time of 1983.
Where the Millennium Falcon was actually called dendritic salt, big 50-pound bags. And all that salt is like used for roads, de-icing, and I think animal feed. I don't know, Jeremy, but it was ICI, dendritic salt. Well, all this was scooped up when they were finished, and George sold all that salt to Stanley Kubrick. And Stanley Kubrick put the salt out on an airstrip in Elstree for a scene in The Shining that I was in, which was being shot at the same time. So all the salt on Hoth was used as salt on the interstate in Colorado on an airstrip in Elstree, where you had the scene where Scatman Crothers is approaching a jackknife trailer over a Volkswagen. And that was not shot in Colorado. That was shot in North London. So dendritic salt has a lot of purposes. So when George, I guess, was running out of money, he figured, okay, well, I'll sell a few bags of salt to Stanley and see if I can recoup a loss. That's my story.
That's an interesting story.
It didn't really help that Scott was really being obnoxious, setting up the scene as just wanting to bring Kurt Wagner to the mall. The scene was really short, and I thought it had nothing to do with the film, the Magneto or Apocalypse plot. I didn't really care for any of these new characters, since they won't give much character development. However, the second viewing, I gave it more thought behind it. First off, it gives the characters something to do. Jubilee didn't really have much to do in scenes outside of being in the classroom, getting captured, being in the car on the way back from the mall, being in the mall scene, raising her hand when Professor Xavier asks people if they have questions about Shakespeare. Probably something else, but I can't remember at the moment. There's not much for Jubilee in this film, and just giving her anything to do in this film is very notable. Also, you have to keep in mind the company behind the X-Men films, Fox. The former CBS Fox, I believe, owned a part of the original Star Wars and still might do at the moment. I recall owning a whole bunch of VHSs of the trilogy, and they were all CBS Fox. Also of note is the fact that there's the third entry. Everyone knows this, but you gotta think about it more in terms of other stuff. There's really third entries in the franchise in the 80s. So I don't know if this actually clarifies with the 80s not having good entries in the franchise, or whether it's has something to do with third entries of now. Apocalypse is the third entry of the franchise in addition to X3, which was highly criticized by X-Men fans. Not to mention that the word apocalypse is associated with end, and this could be the case for the end of a trilogy. Not to mention that everybody thinks this is the end of the X-Men franchise, because how poorly this film did critically. But that's after the fact. It also sets up that this is a 1980s blockbuster, like Return of the Jedi, as the film, Apocalypse, has great influence by the 1980s, especially its score, due to its 80s soundtrack from including Sweet Dreams, and its great original score, sounding very techno and 80s like. There's also the theme of family, which is featured in the Star Wars trilogy after Episode 5 and Episode 6. But the second and third films in the trilogy. Magneto loses his before getting his. Quicksilver is on a journey to save his father, both physically and morally, like Luke Skywalker. Magneto uses a magnetic telekinesis like Force Push, much like Apocalypse, with his powers, and the Jedi. Magneto's an anti-hero seduced by the dark side. This is being symbolized by Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a member of an ancient religion, a master who knows the way. Apocalypse has apprentices. Apocalypse has children. Xavier has children. Moira McTaggart has lost his husband, etc. The family theme is definitely within both films. Oscar Isaac, new Star Wars cast member, plays Apocalypse. Star Wars is popular again. The current time everybody watches the film, X-Men Apocalypse. Why not product place? Illuminati confirmed, as everybody was speculating, Disney's going to buy not Fox, but somehow get the rights back to the X-Men franchise for Marvel. And there's rumors about X-Men joining the Infinity Gauntlet storyline for Marvel. So one can further speculate that by having a Star Wars advertisement, a product of Disney right now. So overall, as you can see, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this Return of the Jedi thing. And it's not just a simple... It was so short and didn't really feel like it added to the story, but if you analyze it a little bit more, it was very interesting how it sort of tied the film together.
Yes, you want a funny story? Yes, we do.
Are you in the right room?
Pardon me?
Are you in the right room?
I don't think I am.
Oh, no.
Well, the way that I got the voice of Salacious Crumb was I was actually working for Lucasfilm. I was a carpenter at Skywalker Ranch. And this is a true story. Yeah. And I said I want a chance to do something. So Ben Burt said, and I told him I could do voice things. So he said, come on in and try out. And he handed me a script for Admiral Akbar. And I got so nervous, I started shaking, and there was nowhere to put the script. I was just holding it, and I'm in Ben Burt's studio in San Rafael. And I'm shaking so bad, and I said, oh my God, Ben, I'm shaking so bad that I can't even read this script. And he noticed it. He's like, oh, just relax, just relax. I was still shaking. I said, well, wait a minute, let me just shake this off. And he said, do whatever you gotta do. And so I walked away from the mic, and I had the script in my hand. I started going, Then I walked back, and I had stopped shaking. It got all the nerves out. And I said, okay, I'm ready. And Ben's behind his deal, behind his podium he had, and he comes out, he goes, no, wait a minute. He comes up and he says, give me that script. He took the script and walked back behind the podium, and I really thought, oh my God, I've offended Ben Burt. I'm never gonna get another chance. And he looks at me and says, that laugh that you just did over there, I have a character that's gonna be perfect for. Forget about Admiral Akbar, we're gonna do a bunch of that today. And that's how I ended up being Salacious Crumb. And then that led to Gremlins.